Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping that you guys out there are having a fantastic day as we are here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back yet again with another segment of Going for the One, where for the month of September, we are looking at our favorite debut albums. And Sagosh is up next with his latest pick.
Thanks, Amanda. Today we'll be looking at the 1972 debut and the only album ever by Islands Mellow Candle. Mellow Candle is a name that I came across in the most peculiar sort of circumstances when a record collector friend of mine just mentioned it offhand as probably one of the most expensive records ever. At that time, I think this was in the early 2000s, he told me that uh, a mint condition copy of an original press goes for upwards of £1,000. And I was like, whoa, what kind of music is worth that much? And I
Jeez.
went into usual skepticism because I had come across a few of these, rare, out of print, limited issue, random LPs. And many of them were, probably valued more for the fact that there are only 50 in existence. But then you listen to the music and you realize why there are only 50 in existence.
Well, that's the Shags.
Yeah, precisely. So I was a little skeptical, but thankfully by the mid 2000s there were reissues coming out, and I managed to get myself a disc. And let me say, this is emphatically a very clear outlier to that kind of scenario where albums are rare only for the sake of being rare and not because there's any quality to the music. Mellow Candle is an absolutely amazing album. Swaddling Songs is the name of the debut album. And it touches places that nobody's really gone at that point in terms of folk rock. The story of Mellow Candle starts in the mid 60s with two teenage schoolgirls, but no worries. Their parents have nothing to do with this. They absolutely do want to be in music.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Great start.
So these two teenagers were called Clodagh Simons and Alison Williams. And they'd been writing songs and put together a demo tape, which they'd been passing around. And through a DJ at Radio Luxembourg, one of the demo tapes managed to reach then Yardbirds manager Simon Napier Bell. And he was impressed enough to offer them an opportunity to record a single. So they traveled down to London, recorded the single with him, and it pretty much sank without trace. Nothing much happened. And the royalty check they received was apparently not even enough to cover their travel back to Ireland.
Okay.
So back to the drawing board, they spent another couple of years honing their craft. And by 71, had assembled a larger band. They recruited David Williams on guitar, Frank Boylan from another Irish band called The Creatures on bass. And they had William Murray, who had played with Kevin Ayers of the Soft Machine on drums. So with this full lineup, they started going through a few of the Irish festival circuits, playing alongside bands like Skid Row, Thin Lizzy, Horselips, and the like. And they happened to get some pretty good feedback there. In fact, Thin Lizzy were impressed enough to offer Clodagh Simons an opportunity to play harpsichord and mellotron on their second album. I think it was called Scenes from a Blue Orphanage or something like that.
That's
Shades
right.
of a Blue.
Shades of a Blue Orphanage. Yeah.
And probably the association with Thin Lizzy got them some interest at Decca Records as well, because they were then offered an opportunity to record an album with Derham, which is a subsidiary of Decca. And they traveled back to London to start work on the album. At the same time, they were also touring around UK, again with some pretty big folk rock stalwarts like Fairport Convention, Steel Eye Span, and Lindisfarne. And they had developed a decent enough reputation, but somehow that did not translate into success for the LP. When it came out, sales were not encouraging and reviews were mixed at best and pretty disparaging at some level, because particularly there was this really scathing review from the NME, which seemed to question whether the album was meant to be something legit or a tax write-off for the label. which is I thought was very, very unduly harsh considering the kind of stuff that does come out that sounds like a tax write-off. I mean, this was quality music. I have no idea what the maker was thinking, but
Okay.
apparently that review kind of sounded the death knell for them, and they never really recovered from that, and the band just kind of broke up and disintegrated. Nothing too negative about the rest of their careers. I mean, it's not like they went into some kind of spiral. They apparently all managed to do decently enough over the years. But yeah, for the band, that was it. They never really reunited or made any attempt to come back based on the success of later revivals. I think the earliest rediscovery of the band happened sometime in the late 80s with reissues of the album coming from Japan. And then gradually through the 90s and 2000s, they developed this cult status. And eventually the album was reissued, I think in 2004 and then in 2008. Over a period of time, there have been multiple reissues coming out. There were even a couple of bootleg releases, of which I have one vinyl record, I think from 89 or 90. They've also had a deluxe edition which features the album plus some demos and two of their original 7-inch singles. So there has been a lot of interest in the band of late, but it's never really translated into any sort of reunion or attempted recreating any music. That said, there is an interesting postscript to this. Clodagh Simons did have another project called Fovea Hex, and they released some EPs in the mid-2000s, featuring, very interestingly, among other people, Robert Fripp, Brian Eno, and a certain Mr. Steven Wilson.
Ooh, okay.
So I wonder if there's another luxury master coming up of this album.
And what was the name of that band, Sagosh?
The name of the band is Mellow Candle. The album is Swaddling Songs.
No, so yeah, I got that. What was the one from
Fovea Hex?
Fovea
F-O-V-E-A.
Hex.
Fovea Hex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's as far as the history of Mellow Candle goes. Coming to the album itself, like I said, it inhabits a very interesting space somewhere between folk, rock, psychedelia, and just a little touch of prog. The musicianship is excellent. Clodagh Simons does a superb job on harpsichord, mellotron, piano. And the guitarist and drummer are also very good. The music is split sort of halfway between tender, melodic, songs with ethereal harmonies. And on the other hand, you have some more rocking, energetic, busy tunes which have a lot going on, really. The first time you listen to it, it's almost a little overwhelming because there's a lot of back and forth of the vocals. There's a lot happening in the background. Every instrument has its own showcasing going on, and it's really a bit to take in at the first listen. It takes a few listens to really understand what's going on. Highlights for me are Silver Song and Reverend Sisters, both belonging to the gentle folk psych kind of scenario. And then there are a couple of rocking tunes like Dan the Wing, which goes full tilt into this satanic invocation, is all about hell's awake and the devil's roar, and powerful backing happening along with that. And then there's Lonely Man, which is a more bluesy rock number. I think the most straightforward song on this. And another real highlight is the closing track, Boulders on My Grave, which doesn't have any real lyrics and is probably the closest nod they get to anywhere near Irish tradition, because most of the singing is just Clodagh and Alison doing the traditional Irish tural oral back and forth. But it's almost like a happening, they're like riding over each other, trying to get a word in edgewise. It's crazy. There's an insane amount of energy happening there. And then it culminates at the end of every verse, so to speak, with the line, I know the Dublin pavements will be boulders on my grave. It's a pretty grim, unsettling kind of note on which to end the album. I think the whole album has a slightly uneasy undercurrent happening. It's pretty, it's melodic, it's absolutely not Velvet Underground or Yoko Ono in any way, but at the same time,
Thank God.
there is this sense of unease. There's this underlying darkness to it, and a sense of mystery. And given the history of the band and the fact that they're so obscure and forgotten, I think that lends an extra sort of spice to the record. It's really an experience, which no matter how many times you hear it, you never quite lose that sense of magic when you listen to this record. And I'm not surprised at all that, and I'm quite glad that it has eventually received its rightful status, and that enemy reviewer can honestly go suck an egg.
Okay, that's good. That's good. All right. Any
Yeah, this is
questions?
new to me. I'll have to check this out.
I'm gonna check it out too.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this record, and it might have even been from something that you posted, Sagosh. And I need to revisit it. I think I've got it in my collection somewhere.
Mellow
I
Candle.
think it's
Okay.
what it wasn't for a long time, but it is available to stream. And
Mhm.
among the many issues, I think the one that's currently in print is the 2008 release on Esoteric Records. It's about $25 on Amazon US, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Esoteric usually do good reissues. Like they package them really well and put a lot of information in their in liner notes, etc. So that's interesting. That's interesting.
And just to verify what you were mentioning, Sagosh, I'm looking at Discogs right now for the Darum release in 1972 of Swaddling Songs. There are 6 copies available on Discogs right now, beginning at $2,995.89.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah, sure. And I'll be kicked on the street,
Well, there's
by
that.
tomorrow. So, all
Yeah, I
right.
think the highest is about £5,000.
Oh my God. Okay, okay, okay.
While
All
they're
right.
still available. Yeah.
Condition original. I It's crazy what's happening to the vinyl market
Oh
these days.
God. Okay.
Wow.
And this is an n number of reissues, so it's not even like the album itself is that hard to get anymore.
But in closing, just to think that as a seller, that you even have the right to even ask for that much money for something like
Absolutely.
that, it boggles the mind. I'm sorry. It's okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Another segment of Going for the One featuring Mellow Candle and Swallowing Songs. Thank you, Sagosh, for that uh, discussion on the album. I'm gonna definitely check it out. Not for that price though, Jim. Thank you very much. Um, Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are having fun doing these episodes, and I really do hope it does come across. I just want to say that doing episodes like this with these 4 or 3, I should say, and myself, is fantastic. I'm having a great time. And again, I hope it does translate when you watch these episodes. So please, again, put down in the comments below your opinion of this album, if you know of this album. I hope you didn't pay that much for this album. And put any albums of debut, albums that you find that are your favorite. Again, we'd love to get a dialogue going on this, okay? And we will be back with another segment of Going for the One. I'm up next. Can't wait for that. Again, click like and subscribe, and do hit the notification bell again to keep yourselves on top of any new content we got coming up. And we will see you soon on another episode of Going for the One. All right. Have a good day. Bye for now.